What actually happens to your body? After 2 full weeks without exercise, most people assume the real decline takes much longer, a month, maybe more. But by the end of just 14 days, the body has already moved further away from its previous baseline than most people realize. And the changes are no longer just subtle. They begin to affect how the body feels, how it moves, and how it performs. So what is the body actually doing during those first 2 weeks? By now, the early changes from the first few days have already taken hold. Blood plasma volume has decreased. Cardiovascular efficiency has dropped. Muscle activation is less precise. But what happens next is where those early shifts begin to compound. One of the most noticeable changes by the second week is a continued decline in cardiovascular fitness. The heart is a muscle, and like any muscle, it adapts to demand. When exercise is consistent, the heart becomes stronger and more efficient. It pumps more blood with each beat. It delivers oxygen more effectively throughout the body. The walls of the heart actually thicken slightly in trained individuals. The chambers expand to hold more blood. This is the bodybuilding capacity, preparing itself for repeated physical demand. But when that demand disappears, the process begins to reverse. After 2 weeks without that stimulus, stroke volume, the amount of blood pumped with each heartbeat begins to decrease. The heart no longer needs to push as much blood per beat, so it doesn't. This means the heart must beat more frequently to maintain the same level of circulation during any given task. Resting heart rate can begin to rise. Blood vessels also play a role here. During regular exercise, blood flow increases dramatically. That repeated surge helps keep the walls of blood vessels flexible and responsive. Without that stimulus, vascular tone can begin to decrease. The system becomes slightly less efficient at distributing oxygen where it is needed, and the effect becomes noticeable. Activities that once felt easy now feel more demanding. Breathing becomes slightly heavier. Recovery takes longer. Endurance drops. VO2 max, the body's ability to use oxygen during exercise, continues to decline during this period. Studies have shown reductions of up to 10% within 2 weeks of inactivity in previously trained individuals. That loss may not sound dramatic, but it represents a meaningful shift in how efficiently the body can perform even basic physical tasks. What makes this especially significant is how quickly it happens. The cardiovascular system is highly responsive. That responsiveness is what allows the body to improve so rapidly with training. But it also means the losses come just as fast when training stops. At the same time, something else begins to change more visibly: muscle function. During the first week, the change was mostly neurological. The connection between the brain and muscles became less efficient. The motor patterns that make movement feel smooth and controlled began to lose their precision. By the second week, structural changes begin to appear. Muscle protein synthesis, the process that maintains and repairs muscle tissue, begins to slow down when muscles are not being regularly stimulated. Under normal conditions, muscle fibers are constantly being broken down and rebuilt. Exercise accelerates that rebuilding process, making the fibers stronger and more resilient. Without the training signal, the rebuilding slows down while the breakdown continues at a steady rate. At the same time, the body begins breaking down muscle proteins at a slightly higher rate. The body is efficient in ways that are not always convenient. If a resource is not being used, the body begins reallocating it. Muscle tissue is metabolically expensive to maintain. Without consistent demand, the body has less reason to invest in keeping it. This creates an imbalance. Over time, that imbalance leads to a gradual loss of muscle mass. Researchers refer to this process as disuse atrophy. It does not require illness or injury. Inactivity alone is enough to trigger it. The change is still small after 2 weeks, but it has started. And more importantly, muscle strength and endurance continue to decline. Movements feel heavier. Fatigue sets in faster. The body becomes less responsive. The muscles are no longer being maintained at the same level. And just like the cardiovascular system, they are adapting to a lower demand. But the changes are not limited to movement and strength. Metabolism continues to shift as well. Exercise plays a major role in maintaining insulin sensitivity. It helps the body manage blood sugar efficiently and use energy effectively. Each time the muscles contract during physical activity, they pull glucose out of the bloodstream directly without requiring insulin to do it. This keeps blood sugar levels stable and reduces the burden on the pancreas. After 2 weeks without exercise, insulin sensitivity declines further. The muscles are no longer pulling glucose as efficiently. This means the body handles glucose less efficiently. Blood sugar remains elevated longer after meals. The pancreas must release more insulin to compensate. Over time, this pattern places more strain on the metabolic system. Fat oxidation, the body's ability to burn fat for fuel, can also begin to decrease. During regular training, the body becomes skilled at using fat as a primary energy source. Enzymes involved in fat metabolism become more active. Mitochondria, the structures that produce energy, become more numerous and efficient. Without training, those adaptations begin to fade. The body becomes more reliant on carbohydrates. Energy levels feel less stable. Cravings may increase, and the sense of metabolic efficiency that comes from regular activity continues to fade. At the same time, the effects on the brain become more noticeable. Exercise is a powerful regulator of mood and mental clarity. It supports the release of dopamine, serotonin, and endorphins. After 2 weeks without that stimulus, baseline levels of these chemicals can remain lower. The result becomes easier to feel. Motivation drops further. Mood becomes less stable. Mental sharpness declines. Tasks that once felt easy to start may feel harder to begin. And this creates a reinforcing cycle. The less the body moves, the less the brain signals a desire to move. Levels of brain-derived neurotrophic factor (BDNF) remain lower without regular exercise. This affects learning, memory, and cognitive flexibility. BDNF is sometimes described as fertilizer for the brain. It supports the growth of new neural connections and helps existing ones stay strong. Without the regular boost that exercise provides, that support begins to diminish. Sleep can also become more disrupted during this period, feeding back into energy, mood, and recovery. By the end of 2 weeks, another system begins to shift more clearly. Inflammation. Regular movement helps regulate inflammatory processes in the body. Without it, low-level inflammation can begin to increase. This is not something most people feel directly, but it shows up indirectly in fatigue, slower recovery, and reduced overall vitality. The body is not in crisis, but it is no longer operating at its previous level of efficiency. By now, multiple systems have shifted together. Cardiovascular capacity has declined further. Muscle strength and mass are beginning to decrease. Metabolic efficiency has weakened. Mental clarity and motivation have dropped. Inflammation has increased. None of these changes are extreme on their own, but together they represent a clear shift in the body's direction. And that is the key idea. The body does not wait long to adapt. It responds to what it is repeatedly given. If movement is consistent, the body builds capacity. If movement disappears, the body begins scaling that capacity back. And by 2 weeks, that process is no longer subtle. So what actually happens after 2 weeks without exercise? The body continues adapting, but now the effects are easier to notice. Endurance drops, strength begins to decline, energy becomes less stable, motivation fades, and the body starts moving further away from the state it had built through consistent activity. But there is something important to understand about this process. It is reversible. The same systems that scale down with inactivity can scale back up with movement. Plasma volume can recover within days. Neuromuscular efficiency improves quickly. Metabolic function responds rapidly to even small amounts of activity. The body is not breaking down. It is adjusting. And it will adjust again as soon as the signal changes. Because in human biology, consistency is not just important, it is everything.